This is What's It Like with Dr. Ken Tangen.
Hi, this is Ken Tangen. This is episode 58 of What's It Like. My guest is Wil Shriner, who is probably best known as a comedian, actor, director, and anything else?
Oh, auctioneer, a male model, aviator,
yes,
scuba diver. Oh, I've got too many hobbies. Ken, it's a curse. It's a curse to have. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, and I work in 5 different fields so that I'm never out of work in all of them.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's good to have. You got to be flexible. It's all about reinventing, staying relevant in this day and age.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up all over. I was born in Manhattan. I grew up in Florida, Texas, Los Angeles, Indiana. Well, basically, we're on the run from federal authorities for a number of my years. So I went to 10 different schools before graduating high school.
Wow. Did you come from a large family?
I have a twin brother and a sister.
Oh.
I have a twin brother and a gibbon, who was my brother. A gibbon ape we raised. He was actually the most favorite of my parents' children because he didn't talk back.
So is your twin brother, was he born the same year?
Yeah, he was born very close in the same hospital.
Yeah.
It was all a coincidence. He was born 7 minutes earlier than I am. He claims they're the happiest 7 minutes of his life.
I just give you the straight lines and let you do what you want.
I just tee him up. Yeah, exactly.
When you were growing up, who had the largest influence on your life?
Well, it depends what are you talking about when you say influence? You're saying the work career influence or, guidance, quality of growth? I would say my mother taught me to drink. My father inspired me to go into show business. The monkey taught me how to pick out head lice. And my brother I learned nothing from.
I'm sure he has a different view of that. Yeah.
No, I think he'll agree.
What was your major challenge growing up?
Oh, my major challenge growing up? Moving around a lot. My dad was in show business. He was in television, radio, and so we moved around a lot, went to a lot of schools, but it was good. It makes you adaptive in nature because if you're always changing schools, you're always kind of the new kid, so you learn how to fit in and do all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that's what made me want to be a comedian because in class, if you got laughs, you were popular, you got the girls, and you also got the nuns to slap you around. So all three I looked forward to, and I think that's what got me into comedy was the movement.
What was school like for you? Were you a good student?
Yeah, absolutely. I was a straight A student, unless you're going to check facts, and then I was an average student.
And you had your own stories, huh?
Yes, yeah. That's right. If this is all off the record, I was the head of my class, like magna cum laude or whatever you want to. But no, I went to UCLA Film School, and I went to the University of Florida Television and Journalism Program School, and then I switched to UCLA, and I went to a number of other colleges in the arts, one called Sherman Oaks Experimental College, which was taught solely by professionals in the industry. I took a screenwriting course with Rod Serling. I took a comedy course with Jonathan Winters, with George Carlin. I took editing with Johnny Alonzo, cinematography. We had all these great people that would come in and teach. So I was like a sponge for a few years when I first moved to Los Angeles, and then that's where I learned all about show business. And then I got a job working for Dick Clark, and then the rest is history. I've been working in the business for 30 years.
Wow. Your dad, Herb Shriner, was well known in the 50s for his humor.
He was a humorist from Indiana. He was kind of a folksy Will Rogers-esque character, and he started in radio playing the harmonica, and then he started telling stories between songs, and then the stories got longer and the songs got shorter, and he worked all over he had a TV show from 1950 to about 1958. One was called Two for the Money, which was a game show. He had a panel show. He had a variety show. And then he got out of television in the late 50s and kind of worked around the country, and we would travel around. He had bought Elvis Presley's old motorhome from Vernon Presley, and we traveled around doing shows all over the country. He would do fairs, and he had a pops orchestra that they toured with, and they would do an evening with kind of show. And I would wrangle the monkey. The monkey was in the show, and so I kind of stood off in the wings. The monkey and I both decided, hey, the show business is good.
It's sort of a Vaudevillian upbringing.
Yes, it would be. I guess it would be a little of that. The Vaudevillians. They basically honed a 10-minute act and did it forever from town to town. Later in my career, when you get on TV, TV eats up your material. So having done the Tonight Show about 15 times, you had to come up with a new 6 minutes every time you did it. So it was always new material, all new stuff. So it changed when I got into comedy when I was about 23 years old at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. And that's where stand-up comedy was in a way, it was very transient, because once the clubs started popping up all through the 80s, you could go around the country and headline these different clubs all around the country and live a life on the road from Wednesday to Sunday. You were at a club, staying in a condo or hotel somewhere. So that was a tough kind of like you say, vaudevillian life. It's still that for musicians. Anybody that's an entertainer, whether you're an actor or a musician or a comedian, you're on the road. You got to, as I explained to my kids, that's how I get paid, by getting on an airplane to go somewhere.
Did you always want to be an actor?
No, I never wanted to be an actor. I still don't want to be an actor. And the great story was Victor Mature. I wanted to join LA Country Club, and they said, "I'm sorry, we don't let actors join." And he said, "I'm not an actor, and I've got 14 movies to prove it." And that's my story. I did have a co-starring role in Peggy Sue Got Married. I played opposite Joan Allen, the great Academy nominee Joan Allen. And I did a bunch of other movies for different people. I've probably done about a dozen or so movies. But I really don't – acting I found boring, waiting around to read your lines. I'm much more interested in directing and producing and writing than I am in acting. Occasionally I'll read for something just to remind me why I don't go out for auditions.
So what exactly do you do?
Well, it depends on the day, Today, I was editing all morning a video about my auction company called Raise the Funny. We go in and we raise a lot of money for charities. In the last couple of years, I've probably raised over $4 million. And we come in and do it like a live auction, but we do it in a funny way, a very entertaining way. And we kind of get the audience both engaged and involved, where they feel part of the show and they don't tune out. So today I was editing a sample of an auction I just did last month in Pebble Beach for the Boys and Girls Club. So that was my day-to-day. I was sitting with my wife and we were editing. On any given day, I might go flying, I might play golf, I might go scuba diving. Living in Florida, the options are endless. You look outside and you see what kind of day it is. I might get on my stand-up paddleboard and paddle around, and I swim a mile every other day. So, that keeps me busy.
Yeah. You used to do a lot of directing for television and some films. Do you still do that?
I did a lot of sitcoms. I did Frasier and Becker and Raymond and My Wife and Kids and Two Girls and Louie and
many of my favorites.
Yeah, and most of those shows are all gone, and there's a lot of reality television on. So we're hoping that the sitcom comes back. I mean, we have a few new, what's called multi-camera sitcoms, which are like Frasier and Raymond, where we have Whitney and a few of these. So these new shows, in the beginning, they always get the guy that did the pilot. And, then when the show's a hit and we have, an opportunity, I'll go back and do some more of that, because I love working in television. It's like a play a week. You come in on Monday, you read the script, and on Friday you shoot it in front of a live audience, and then you're done and you start all over again. Mm-hmm. Unlike a movie, I did a movie called Hoot, which was based on a Carl Hiaasen book, best-selling kids book that Jimmy Buffett produced with me. And that, that's a couple of years out of your life, whereas a television show, is a week out of your life. So it's a little more lucrative. I mean, a movie lives on forever. I mean, it's great. This little film, keeps it's you can see it. Actually, as I was looking today, it was on YouTube. I don't know how they get away with putting it on YouTube. Because it had 33,000 views, and I didn't get paid for any of them. But I wrote it, the screenplay, and I directed it and produced it. So it was a great undertaking. The movie's, done, tremendous DVD business. It's a family film, so it does better sort of in the DVD and pay-per-view than it did at the box office. Mm-hmm. So movies are fun, live performing is fun, but television is the most fun because it's the most immediate, and it's it's over and done in a week.
Mm. What's the best thing about your job?
Oh, the best thing about my job is it's always different. I really love the variety. You're never doing the same thing twice. I mean, I'm not an accountant doing tax returns. I'm not I'm not a mechanic working on car. I mean, every day is a new set of challenges, a new, different tasks, and a different adventure. So I think because I have a short attention span, I like the variety of things.
What's the worst thing about your job?
The worst thing about my job, sometimes just the worst part of my job is really looking for work. I mean, and people, I tell my son is an actor, and I said that's the job, is looking for the job. Yep. When the best thing is doing the job, the worst thing's when it ends and you got to go look for another job. So if you get hired to do, say you get hired to do a series or something, then then now you have a job. So the worst part of it, which is the looking, is over.
Mm-hmm.
The doing is fun. The looking is over. But, and today, in this day and age, a lot of people are looking for work, and you have to kind of figure a way to market yourself differently. It's very competitive. I mean, there's a lot less work in every field. So, I think that's the challenge today.
What type of person would be good at your job?
Well, you have to be inventive and funny, and it helps to be well-informed, well-read. I mean, I think every comedian that I know is a pretty bright guy in general. To be a stand-up comedian, I think it requires, an ability to think on your feet. As a director, what makes a good director? Well, some directors are good with actors. Some directors are good with cameras. Some directors are good with comedy. Some directors are good with 1 out of 3. Some directors are good with all 3. I think to make a good director, it's really having a diverse skill set. I mean, I worked pretty much everybody's job on a set, so I could step into any position and do that job only because I know pretty much the elements of that task. So that makes a good director having having been trained in all the different, or not trained, but at least being aware of all the different jobs. Because as movie making and television, it's a collaborative effort. And as a director, you're basically the head cheerleader. You've got to get all the collaboration to work. You've got to make it all come across the best way you can. In television, the writers are really the guys in charge. In movies, the directors are really the guys in charge. So the writers in TV and sitcoms, it's their show. The showrunner, they call that guy, if it's say, for example, the guy on 2.5 Men, Chuck Lorre, he's the showrunner. I mean, he calls the shots. When he and Charlie Sheen have a disagreement, it's his decision, what's going to happen. That's the best job in television, is being the creator, showrunner. And those are the guys that, that own a big stake in the show and, profit for many years after that. As directors, we just come in and our job is to take the script that they've written and, and visualize it and put it on its feet and shoot it and then move on to the next one.
Jump between the 4 cameras.
That's right. Well, the 4 cameras are all rolling simultaneously, so you're doing sort of a play, but you're doing a little bit of a ballet where all 4 cameras are rolling, they're moving, they're changing positions, they're changing frame composition you're trying to tell the story in 4 angles, and you generally do each scene twice. So essentially you have 8 angles or 8 sizes of frames to tell the story. So if you have a close-up of one actor and a close-up of the other actor, you might have a 2-shot and a big master of the other, and you're moving that around to kind of help tell the story, help convey the jokes, and make the show work.
Does it take long to edit that kind of show?
Well, the directors, generally the editors take what you give them and they edit, and they give you an editor's cut, and you sit down and you go, I'd like to see this different, I'd like to see that different, let's put a close-up in here, let's go to the master here. You give them their notes. They take your notes, they implement them into the director's cut, and that cut goes then to the producers, and the producers can use all or none of it. It's so that's the way it works in television. In film, you basically do your cut, and then you go and get a preview screening, so then you can show your version of the movie to a recruited audience, and then they fill out cards and they evaluate what they like and didn't like, and then the studio, after your preview, then they can come in and make changes and they can add things. And in our case, they wanted to make the film a little clearer for younger people, so we dumbed it down a little bit for 5-year-olds when the film was really intended for 12-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the studio's prerogative. It's their money, right, and they can do what they want. So you're never. you're never really completely in charge, except when you're standing on the stage, because you are the producer, you're the performer, you're the editor, you're the director, you're the writer, you're everything. So it's the one time where you really have complete, sort of autonomy over what you do, and the only gauge is whether the audience laughs or likes it, and that's the fun part of live performing, is because it's never the same, it's different every night, and you get to kind of adjust as need be.
How would one get a job like yours?
Basically, I think sleep with as many people as you can.
Indiscriminately.
Yeah, indiscriminately, and then figure out which ones can help you. I don't know. I mean, I started out to be a director, really. My dad gave me a little Super 8 movie camera when I was a kid, and we made home movies. Like a lot of filmmakers, we made Batman and Man from U.N.C.L.E. and Magnificent Seven. And when I became, of school age, I wanted to go to film school. And in film school, I studied with a lot of greats, and we studied a lot of film history and a lot of, and then when I got out of, I left film school to go work on a movie called Ode to Billy Joe with Max Baer, and I worked for a year as a production assistant, but I got to work in every different department while I was on the movie, and that was part of my. I think I made $100 a week, and they paid for my hotel and food, but I learned all about filmmaking. I came back and finished up at UCLA, and won some awards for some of my short films, and then out of film school, I had been showing my little films around in little art houses, and I one day stumbled into the Comedy Store, and I saw what the comics were doing. And I brought my comedy films into the Comedy Store, and I set up a projector and screen, and I showed these funny films in the clubs, and they would always go over well. And that's where I met David Letterman, who liked what I did. And David took me on the Tonight Show with him the first 3 times when he was a guest host, and then he went to New York in 1980 to host a morning show, a short-lived morning show, and he brought me on as a cast member and writer, performer, and director, and I did a bunch of pieces for his morning show, and that kind of led to Bloopers and Practical Jokes, where I did more short films for them, and then I had done a silly little film about my dog stealing my car and driving around the neighborhood, and a casting director named Fred Roos, a producer, had seen this film and wanted to get a copy of it, and brought me into a meeting, and he asked me if I was an actor, and I said I'd studied acting, and I knew how to act, but I was more interested in filmmaking. He said, "Well, come back and meet Francis Coppola." So he brought me back, and I met Francis, and for me it was like, hey, I'll come back and meet Francis, even if there's no part for me. And then I don't know, whatever, he saw something in me that he cast me in Peggy Sue, and then suddenly I'm working we worked about 7 months on Peggy Sue, got married, and I came back from that, and then I did an Amazing Stories for Spielberg, and I thought I was on my way to being an actor, and then Alan Thicke actually was going to do a talk show, and he got growing pains, and they were looking for a host for a talk show. So they came to me, and I had always admired Johnny Carson and David, and thought, well, what a great job. If I ever had the chance, I'd jump on it. So they developed a talk show that we did in a bunch of local markets, and they cut it together into a pilot, and they took it out in syndication, and we sold it in 110 cities, 80% of the country, in syndication in 87. The next thing I know, I was a talk show host, and we did 200 hours of the show, and it was a lot of fun. It was very interesting and different, and it was during a writer's strike, so we were sort of working, on our own, making stuff up as we went every day. And we were doing 2 and 3 shows a day, so it was a grueling schedule. And when Group W went through a lot of internal changes, we didn't get renewed for another year. So from there, I just went on and hosted a bunch of shows, and hosting and doing. I did a game show with kids. I did a game show with animals. I did a variety show with animals, and I did a show with inventors, and I just kept working and doing what I could. And as I was getting older, my manager, they have a thing called the breakdown services, where they look for actors, and he said, "You've made it," because they're looking for a Wil Shriner type. And I said, "Hey, well, submit me. I think I'm right for it." And he said, "Well, they want a younger, cheaper Wil Shriner." So I realized that my days might be numbered in front of the camera, and I had gone to a TV thing at the TV Academy about directors. Jimmy Burrows, who's one of the great great directors that does all the big shows, and Jay Sandrich, who I knew through playing poker. So I went to see them be honored, and and then on my way out in the elevator, I got in with Kelsey Grammer, who I knew from Florida, and Kelsey said, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm thinking about directing television sitcoms." And he said, "Well, if you want to learn, you should come to Frasier." And he invited me to come to Frasier, and I was there like the next day, and I studied and observed, for almost a year, watching all the different directors come through and watch how their styles and the different work, and how they made things funnier, and how they helped the actors, and how they knew when to back off, and a number of directors, Pam Fryman, who was one of the great directors working today, she took me under the wing and took me to other shows, and Andy Ackerman and a number of other directors, took me around, and Jimmy Burrows, had great advice about the process of directing. And then one day they said, we assume you're interested in directing Frasier. You've been hanging around long enough. I said, yeah. Matter of fact, I am interested. And they gave me one to direct in 2000, and it was a great episode. It was a really well written episode. And it was written by Jay Cogan, who is Arnie Cogan's son, who wrote all the Mad Magazine movie parodies. And Jay's he's a comedian and a writer, and he wrote this one about Dr. Mary. It was about Frasier replaces Roz. Roz goes away, and Kim Coles comes in to replace her, and she kind of takes over, and Kelsey can't get rid of her because she's black, and it's a whole, it was a whole sort of, he felt uncomfortable, and it won a bunch of awards. It won a Humanitas Award and other things, and it was a great one. And from there, it just doors started opening, and then I got to do Raymond, the season finale of Raymond that year, and Ladies Man, and then the next year I did 3, and then the next year I did 7, the next year I did 12, the next year I did 17, and it just kept growing and growing. So there was a kind of a momentum in the sitcom, and then the movie opportunity came along. Jimmy Buffett had bought the rights to the book, and we were friends. And he said, "What do you think of this book?" And I read it, and I said, "Oh, it'll be a good little movie." And I said, "I'll go. How do we do that?" And I said, "Well, the best way is to get a good script that you like and you can sell, and then you go out and make it." So I said, "I'll write the script. I'll adapt the screenplay from the book if I can direct it." So he said, "Okay." And we did that, and we took it to a studio. The first place we went was to Walden Media, and we sold it on our first meeting. And then, we left the meeting, and we were going. I think we went to Las Vegas because Jimmy was working up there. And when we landed, they called and said, "Yeah, you're making a movie." So we were all ecstatic. And then, of course, the first thing Walden wanted to do was get rid of me and bring in another writer and another director. But Jimmy and Frank Marshall, our producer, they stood by me and said, "No, this is the guy that wrote this, and this is the guy we're going with." So they gave me that opportunity. They were loyal, and we made a pretty good little movie. And it got messed with a lot by the studio, and it came out, and it didn't set the box office records, that some of these movies can do. But when you're a little family film and you're up against, our first week we were up against Mission Impossible, and then the Da Vinci Code, and then Poseidon Adventure. We had a tough competition, but the movie lives on, and I still. It's in my Google alerts, and it still plays in libraries and schools, and kids come up all the time. And it's a beautifully shot film. We had a great director of photography who's a Lifetime Award winner, Michael Chapman, who had shot Jaws and shot The Godfather and shot all kinds of movies as a camera operator. And was just this great sort of mentor for my first film. And Michael had directed, and he was a DP on so many movies. Raging Bull. I mean, his credentials. He was about, I don't know, almost 70 when we hired him, and the studio kept going, "Why would you hire an old guy?" I go, "Because I'm hiring a guy who's got a tremendous amount of experience," and he was a tremendous asset to have on the movie, and we became good friends, and we still stay in touch, and so it was fun. I had a great year shooting the movie, and I've written another one called Flush, which is about another one of Carl Hyacint's kids' books. And we're out looking for funding. These books, they sell 1 million copies, and then you think, well, there's 1 million people that probably want to see the movie. So we just kind of, you try to independently finance the next one, so you have a little more control over it. But in the meantime, I'm enjoying life. I'm in my 50s. I like to have a good time and work. It's a kind of a blend of both.
Do you like being famous?
I would say I was more famous in the 80s and 90s when I was in front of the camera. So having tasted that, with fame comes, a lot of people, wanting to talk to you and wanting to bother you and sit down while you're eating and buy you a drink and, and all that stuff. So it has its good and its bad points. I mean, I don't mind not being famous anymore, having tasted it, because you have sort of an anonymity when you're, I don't look the same as I did when I was on TV.
You sort of get your life back, huh?
Yeah, so now I can go back into strip clubs and things like that, but without signing autographs. But no, it definitely has its rewards and it definitely has its hassles, and anybody will tell you that. I mean, when my brother was a daytime soap opera actor, he was 30 years as Scotty Baldwin on General Hospital, and he still looks good and still looks the same, and people come up all the time and want to chit chat. It's it's great when you want that, but it's also a pain when you don't want that. Mm-hmm. So it's fame is a lot of people today want to be famous for nothing, like the Kardashians, like Paris Hilton. They really have no skill. Snooki doesn't do anything. The situation they don't have any, they're not a talent. They're just a personality. And people look at that and go, oh, I want to be like that. I want to be able to get free stuff. But I think, fame is something that should come to those that earn it and deserve it, not just because you're on TV.
Wil Shriner will tell you what you should do with your life right after I remind you of the importance of health. Let me introduce you to a disorder that impacts a lot of people. In the UK, it's called ME, myalgic encephalopathy. In the US, it's called CFIDS, chronic fatigue and immune dysfunction syndrome. Whatever you call it, this is a horrible disease. My daughter has had this for over 12 years. It's a chronic neurological disease of unknown cause and no known cure. Almost every body system is impacted. The heart, the immune system, the central nervous system. So you have problems with vision and balance. My daughter can't sit up for any length of time. She can sit up long enough to get into her electric wheelchair so that she can drive from her hospital bed to the bathroom and back. This disease screws up life. It has totally disabled her. And for patients who do get better, it's often a relapsing, remitting disease. Although it can occur at any age, it's most commonly found in women like my daughter in their 20s and 30s. Clearly, this disorder needs more research. So go to cfids.org and click on the donate button. cfids.org. Thanks so much. So, Wil, everybody has to give themselves motivation occasionally. How do you give yourself a kick in the pants?
It's true. I mean, you have to. I do go into my slumps where I don't feel like doing anything, but then having my motivation is I still got a lot of responsibility. I got a kid in college. I got a kid out of college with no career, but a BA in theater, which is basically entitles him to park cars. So just responsibilities. You have to keep working. You have to keep pushing yourself. One thing I admired about Jimmy Buffett was every year he would take on some new challenge, whether it was learning how to snowboard or speak immersive French or whatever he would do. He was a guy who challenged himself every year to grow and do something different. And I think from what I understand, if you're always challenging yourself, whether it's learning a new software program or learning how to, speak another language or learning how to, do something that you already do better. I have a piano. I sit down and regret not staying with my piano lessons when I was a kid. I have a lot of regrets. As you get older, you kind of realize how little time you got left to do everything you ultimately wanted to do. When you're young, you can kind of set your sights on anything. But as you get older, you realize, well, if I'm going to learn to play the piano, jazz piano, I better get on it,
Let me turn the question around. When you have to soothe yourself, how do you calm yourself down?
Alcohol.
Ask a comedian a question.
That's right. I tell you, a martini is like a woman's breast. One's not enough and three's too many. My favorite quote from a movie. But no, I go and swim. I mean, I find it, when I swim, I put on some headsets. I have some waterproof headsets that I can listen to music or books on tape, and I swim for an hour. And I find it extremely therapeutic to just kind of zone out. And in a way, I come out of the pool every day with like new ideas on how to fix something I'm working on, how to begin something. Or I come up with an idea for a joke. The challenge is remembering it, from pool to home.
Yes.
But I have about 8 projects on my computer that are in various levels of completion. So I do get scattered, which is difficult, and when I listen to some of these motivational tapes and things like that, they tell you, you got to pick so many hours to work on each item a day if you're going to do that. I mean, this week was, I'm going to finish this auction video, and that was the focus of this week. Mm-hmm. Now it's Friday. I just actually finished it a little while, about an hour ago. So I'm just looking at it, and I'll post it up on my site in a couple hours. But at least, I got it done. I can check that off. I mean, I'm a big to-do list guy, and I have to do now, to do soon, to do eventually, to do one day. I got a lot of categories, but they're all good things, in the to-do list.
Is there an event in your life that has challenged you to the core?
Well, making the movie was a big challenge. I do a lot of corporate work. I go and MC and I do these auctions, and I moderate conventions, and I do all kinds of things. So they're all challenges. You all have to prepare and go in. There's been no event that I wasn't able to dive in and get out unscathed. I mean, some go better than others. Some, when you hit a home run, some, where you just like, well, the double was all that was going to get out of that show. In terms of writing, I don't think you ever finish writing. I mean, I just keep rewriting and rewriting. I'm working on a play right now, and I've been working on it for 2 years. It involves my son and I, and he's like, "When are you going to finish that, Dad?" And I go, "Hey, I got to do something else that pays the rent right now." So I just finished a project for the city of Fort Lauderdale, the Centennial. I did a series of videos for the celebration of the Centennial, and we project them on buildings all over the city to sort of show how the city's changed over the last 100 years. And it was a concept I came up with, and then they were like, "Well, who's going to do it?" And I go, "I don't know. Yeah, who's going to do it?" And they go, "Why don't you do it?" I go, "Oh God." So I ended up taking it on, and it turned out really nicely, and they were all happy. So you look, here we are. What is this, coming into October? I've got going to go to LA and shake the trees and try to get on some sitcoms while I'm out there, some of the shows that look like they're going to get picked up. And, and we got this other movie that I keep giving to people to see if they want to put up $8 million and make it. So if, any of your listeners have $8 million, they're not, they don't know what to do with. So it's all good. I want to get my commercial. I have a multi-instrument license. So I want to get my commercial rating. I'd like to get better on the piano. I'd like to spend more time in the Bahamas. You either have time and no money, or money and no time. So it's, it depends. When I had money and time, that's sort of where I came off the movie. I had a little bit of money and a little bit of time. So I kind of enjoyed the time off. And, you could just get up in the morning and say, "Hey, I think I'll go play golf today," or, "Hey, I'll read this book," or maybe I'll do this. So, but, it's nice to not have to get up and go to a job you hate every day. I mean, I tell people all the time, if you want to do something, do something you love, and then it won't feel like work.
Being rich and famous doesn't shield you from the tragedies of life.
No. I mean, life. Hey, life. My mom and dad both died in an auto accident when I was 16 years old. So I've been on my own, making my own decisions ever since. So it's, I'm not one that has avoided tragedy. I mean,
yeah. Is there an idea or a principle that has helped you through all those issues?
No, my son just lost a friend, and he was asking me how I deal with it. I think, time is a little bit of a healer of any kind of loss and any kind of pain. But I just kind of like, I don't dwell on it. It is what it is, and you got to move on and get back on the horse, as they say.
If you were giving a commencement address for high school or college, what would be your best advice? What would you say?
I would say, if your parents are paying for it, get your master's. If your parents aren't paying for it, then get out there and do something you love, and find something you love, and be creative, and challenge yourself. Think outside the box. I mean, I think, a lot of kids are coming out of school with no direction these days. And I think, while you're in school, it's the ultimate place. I mean, my daughter's in school, and it's like, this is your next couple of years. You have you can study anything you want. Take some business classes, take some history classes, take some English, take a variety of everything and figure it out. Because you don't have to do what you set out to do when you're 17 or 18. You can change your mind. I mean, I'm living proof of that. I changed my mind from being a director to being a comedian to being an actor to being a television host to being a director again to being a playwright to being a movie director. I just keep bouncing in and out of jobs because it's you got to go where the work is.
I want to thank Wil Shriner for joining me today. Thanks, Wil. I appreciate it.
I really had no choice in the matter, did I?
I think you actually said yes.
Oh, did I? Oh, that was one of my people said yes.
Yeah, that people being you.
Right.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time.
All right, Ken. Nice talking to you. Good luck with your project.